A young man, clearly nervous, is received with respect by an imposing woman. Despite the apparent honor of the situation, he feels cornered and confused, thinking that this was not what he wanted. To his surprise, he is announced as the new supreme commander of the knights. The young man, visibly distressed, stares at the beautiful knight who watches him with a confident smile. Amid the confusion and sudden twist in his life, he despairs, not understanding how he ended up in such a surreal situation. A certain lord quickly gained prominence, but his notable deeds were actually the merit of a secret unit. This group was made up exclusively of women from different races, all led by a single brilliant genius mage. The arrogant Count Balich presents himself as the lord of his lands, boasting about his domain and noble status. While showing off power in his luxurious chair, he questions the true meaning of nobility, making it clear he sees his territory and inhabitants as extensions of his property. Count Balich, in a pompous tone, assigns a mission to the protagonist, treating it as an honor coming from his grandeur. The hooded man accepts, with exaggerated humility. The task, however, is dangerous. Eliminate Avier, an elite elf who became a rebel and now leads a gang of bandits within the Count's territory. Given the seriousness of the situation, the hooded man recognizes he is dealing with something out of the ordinary. Count Balich reinforces the importance of the Order of the Knights, highlighting its long history and prestige. Becoming a knight is seen as the highest possible honor, regardless of race, something unthinkable for a commoner in normal times. Count Balich becomes enraged, unable to understand why anyone would abandon the prestige of knighthood to join bandits. He shouts, outraged by such a decision, calling it a waste of a dream. The protagonist, staying calm, asks him to restrain himself and assures he will handle the situation immediately. Count Balich, after clearing his throat and hesitating, discreetly hands a bag of money to the hooded man as an incentive. With this, he reinforces that he is trusting him. The protagonist accepts calmly, aware that the renegade knight involved caused a scandal, something that needs to be solved discreetly. The protagonist reveals his true nature with an enigmatic smile. He does not see himself as a hero or public figure, but rather as a shadow, someone tasked with erasing inconvenient truths without leaving traces. The protagonist leaves the castle thinking about his new mission, to eliminate an elite elf, a former knight, known for his absurd strength. Excited by the challenge, he puts away the payment and disappears discreetly through the streets. Meanwhile, rumors spread among civilians about a gang led by an elf causing chaos in the surroundings. Civilians panic upon discovering the bandit leader is a former knight, warriors so powerful that each equals an army. Facing the fallen bodies, they realize they are facing the worst possible scenario. Meanwhile, the protagonist coldly assesses the situation, predicting the confrontation will bring heavy casualties if the rumors are true. Confident and with a sharp smile, the protagonist states that under his command, none of his allies will be defeated. As he disappears discreetly, guards notice a strange sound, but soon dismiss it as imagination. A few days later, events move to the mountains, indicating the mission is about to begin. In the forest, a stopped wagon breaks the silence among the trees. The protagonist, disguised and mounted on a horse, watches silently. A rough-looking man approaches with a provocative smile and calls him Old Man, starting what seems to be an ambush. The protagonist is surrounded by a group of bandits who demand he leave the wagon and run away, promising to spare his life. Armed and confident, the criminals mock the situation. However, the protagonist smiles silently, revealing that everything is going as planned. With a firm command, the protagonist calls his team hidden in the wagon. Imposing silhouettes and a beastly paw emerge from the darkness, shocking the bandits. One of them, confused and scared, stares at the scene, not understanding what they are about to face. The bandits freeze upon seeing huge beast-like creatures appear before them, wielding giant weapons and wearing demonic masks. The leader, shocked, questions who those frightening beings are that now face them with hostile intentions. Realizing the true nature of the creatures, the bandits panic. They are giant ogres. Terrified by the enemy's strength and size, they desperately try to flee. One ogre raises his huge club, ready to attack mercilessly. With a devastating blow from his giant club, the ogre throws several bandits into the air in a single move, spreading chaos. The enemies are thrown like dolls, with no chance to react. The ogre's firm expression shows the fight is far from over. For him, this is just the beginning. The bandits, completely overpowered by the brutal force of the ogres, fall into despair. They realize they stand no chance against such monsters, and conclude their only hope is to call their leader, the elf. With hatred and confidence in their chief's power, they say he is someone no one should underestimate. With a relieved smile, the bandits announce the arrival of their leader, an elf wrapped in a magical barrier slowly advancing through the forest. Proud, they reveal he was once part of the Order of the Knights, an achievement that demands respect. While the ogres watch attentively, the enemies regain confidence. The elf finally appears fully, surrounded by a magical, crystalline structure radiating grandeur. His calm posture and sharp gaze reveal the confidence of an experienced warrior. Silent, he watches the situation, ready to intervene with the power of someone who once belonged to the legendary Order of the Knights. The elf's presence impacts everyone. His magic is so intense that the ogres immediately sense it, recognizing they face a formidable opponent. The protagonist watches with a restrained smile, admitting that this is indeed a true knight, someone worthy of attention. The elf immediately senses something strange about the enemies, noticing the smell of preservatives and the unusual appearance of the soldiers. Upon analyzing the situation, he concludes they sent an assassin to eliminate him. With a calm smile, he reveals he expected old comrades from the Order of the Knights, but instead received a Shadow's envoy. The protagonist reveals that, even if failing, the arrival of the Knights would be inevitable, a move that guarantees his victory anyway. He mocks the Count's intentions, saying it was all a desperate attempt to gain prestige. Laughing, he ridicules the situation and the enemy's naivety, while the elf watches, recognizing the truth with a sharp look. The elf admits he would stand no chance against all the Knights of the Order, whose members are as powerful as, or even more than him. Outraged, he says that although the other is following the Lord's orders, he was the one who started everything recklessly. Meanwhile, the protagonist, aware of the risk, remains confident that there is still a real chance of victory. With a confident smile, the protagonist declares that this was exactly why he came. In response, the elf instantly activates his magic, dispelling the barrier with power and precision. The tension rises as the two face each other, ready for direct confrontation. A powerful explosion of magical energy bursts before the protagonist, destroying everything in its path with overwhelming force. Amid smoke and impact, he stands firm, facing the attack head-on, unshaken and ready to strike back. Even after resisting a devastating attack, the protagonist walks steadily. Surprised by the impact he suffered, he admits he is more worn out than expected. Still, he keeps a smile on his face, recognizing the absurd power of the enemy's magic and considering it simply insane. Even after casting a spell with the combined power of 10 ordinary mages, the elf notices his magical barrier only suffered cracks. With serenity and a slight smile, he admits the result makes sense. After all, that attack would not be enough against someone like his opponent. The elf reveals his barrier is reinforced with magical power equivalent to 11 human mages, yet it still suffered damage. He deduces the enemy's attack was just 1 unit of strength below what was necessary. The allies celebrate confidently, while the ogres are stunned by such resistance. It is explained that even low-level elves possess double the power of an ordinary human mage. The mid-level ones easily surpass 5. With a confident smile, the elf begins a powerful enchantment. Magical circles appear around him, revealing his magical capacity far beyond the average elf's. Then he launches a series of spells simultaneously with ease, demonstrating the true level of his strength. The elf proudly reveals that, as an elite elf, he has magical power superior to the combined strength of 40 human mages. Surrounded by a restored barrier, he shows absolute mastery of his abilities. The protagonist recognizes his skill, surprised by how fast the elf rebuilt his defense, and admits that although he might not be on his level, he is worthy of respect. The elf, confident, provokes the protagonist by implying he has already used his trump card and now only counts on his unusual ogres. Meanwhile, he prepares another magical attack with multiple spell circles around him. Sure, he controls the situation. The elf launches his powerful spell from above, disdainfully questioning if that attack would be enough to defeat him. The explosion hits the ogres directly, leaving the protagonist visibly surprised by the intensity of the impact. The battlefield shakes before the relentless attack. The elf's attack breaks the ogre's defense, causing screams of pain and tension among the group. The protagonist runs to them, concerned about their condition. Despite the impact, one ogre responds, "They are fine," still standing even if visibly shaken. From afar, the elf watches, keeping his cold and confident posture. The warrior ogres, although still standing, watch the damage left by the magical offensive. Visibly harmed, they notice their equipment has been severely compromised. One of them, with a cracked mask, shows concern, aware that the next attack could be decisive. Despite the visible damage to their clothes and weapons, the ogres remain firm, ready to fight. The leader approaches relieved, prioritizing their safety above all. With a serene smile, he says it was worth it as long as they are okay. The leader, standing firmly beside his ogre warriors, raises his hand confidently and declares with determination that they will not accept defeat. Even after the intense battle, he remains proud, conveying strength and hope to his group. The elf, confident, believes the enemy has no more energy to launch another attack, considering the situation a farce. However, the protagonist surprises him with an enigmatic smile, revealing he still has firepower, which shocks the elf faced with the unexpected turn. An intense light begins to form in the sky, signaling the approach of a powerful attack. The population watches anxiously as a magical wave advances. The elf, surprised, senses the imminent danger, while the soldiers around panic and try to retreat. A colossal explosion hits the field, engulfing everything in a wave of light and destruction. With his back turned, the elf stands firm inside his crystalline barrier, facing the impending impact with apparent confidence, or denial of what is coming. Amid the chaos caused by the magical explosion, the human leader remains imposing, arm extended and gaze firm, showing he is still in control. Behind him, the impact continues to devastate the area, sealing the result of his powerful counterattack. Stunned by the attack's result, the elf despairs as he sees his powerful barrier cracked. Unable to understand how a human could generate such magical force, he furiously questions the origin of that power. On the other side, the human leader remains calm and confident, responding only with a firm and enigmatic gesture. The human responds with a provocative smile, saying even he doesn't know how many times he can launch that attack. The elf, overcome by fear and disbelief, trembles, imagining the extent of his opponent's power. The attack is launched with brutal intensity, hitting the elf's barrier directly. The explosion drags everything around, while the human watches with a confident smile, showing complete control of the situation. Despite being hit 4 times by the powerful attack, the elf remains standing inside his barrier, which remains active. The ogres watch in shock, while the human keeps a calm smile, still confident in the battle's outcome. Even after resisting 4 powerful attacks, the elf finally reaches his limit. His barrier remains intact, but his magical energy is completely drained, and he collapses inside the magical prison, unable to continue fighting. The protagonist approaches the magical prison and praises the enemy's resistance, who managed to withstand the magical power, equivalent to 40 people. Exhausted and defeated, the elf questions how he managed to launch so many consecutive attacks. With a carefree smile, the protagonist replies that, honestly, there's no reason to explain. With an imposing gesture, the protagonist raises his finger toward the sky, while beams of light cross the forest, illuminating his figure. The enemy, still trapped and lying on the ground, watches the scene powerless, completely defeated. The enemy, fallen and stunned, stares at the sky, visible through a huge hole opened among the trees. Terrified, he realizes the magic beam passed through everything in its path. Shocked by the magnitude of the attack, he begins to question if it was really possible. Meanwhile, the protagonist just smiles confidently, ironically confirming his opponent's doubt. The protagonist looks at the defeated elf with disdain, stating that his power, though rare, is worthless. Then he coldly pronounces his sentence, that he die and turn to gold, while the surrounding landscape remains devastated by the battle. A few days later in the royal capital, a solemn meeting is held. The body of the defeated elf lies in the center of the room, surrounded by authorities and important figures. The protagonist confirms without hesitation. There is no doubt about his identity or his fate. In the throne hall, the defeated elf's identity is confirmed as Avier, leaving everyone shocked by his defeat without casualties. One of the leaders declares there is nothing more to discuss. Even without official reward, the situation was resolved, ending a problem originally the kingdom's responsibility. Testoria, the highest commander of the Order of Knights and an elite human, orders that a reward be sent as recognition. Her decision is immediately followed by her subordinates. Testoria confirms that Count Boric personally led the troops and defeated Avier. Impressed by his power, she reflects on his exceptional abilities. Meanwhile, Boric, now hooded, watches from afar with an enigmatic smile, suggesting it might be worth investigating further. A group travels along the road with a wagon, discussing having left the body of an elf behind. The hooded leader assures everything is fine, as Boric's men will arrive soon. Meanwhile, a woman complains about the heat and wants to remove part of her clothes. The leader asks her to endure a little longer, as the camp is already in sight. A large camp with several tents is shown, full of workers. A giant hairy monster greets the group back, happy to see the leader again. Other subordinates also approach, greeting the returning leader who arrives mounted with his entourage. The chief thanks the monsters for protecting the camp and confirms there were no attacks. Shortly after, a woman asks to remove her hairy disguise because she is sweating a lot. With his permission, she happily starts shedding the heavy costume. Relieved, the women, disguised in heavy furs, finally remove the costumes and rest, sweaty and exhausted. One of them, clearly worn out, asks for water while trying to recover from the heat. The women complain about the unbearable heat of the costumes and ask if there is any way to improve it. The leader laughs, saying they are already working to improve the outfit in the future, but ends up changing the subject. Soon after, he tries to hide when he notices someone approaching. 3 small goblins run excitedly to the leader, celebrating how much they worked. They thank him for trusting them with the camp, say they took good care of the elf girls, and that the food is ready, all proud of their effort. The leader praises everyone in the camp for their effort, saying the success was only possible thanks to them. The goblins comment that the elves suffered even more and say they are resting in the tent. Before entering, the chief congratulates everyone again for the great work and for taking down the target. Inside the tent, several elf girls appear completely exhausted, some lying down and others trying to recover. One sighs, saying how tired she is, while the leader watches the scene at the entrance. The elves remain exhausted, asking for water, while a servant offers something on a tray. Some recover little by little, and one elf, with a soft look, calls for sensei, showing relief at seeing him there. The leader explains that the enemy elf was a former knight so strong he withstood all their attacks without even flinching. The elves are surprised and frustrated, commenting that not even the combined magic of all of them was enough. One, head down, concludes that in the end they, seen as the weakest, did nothing to help. The leader asks why everyone is discouraged and reminds them that in the end it was they who weakened the enemy. He reinforces that the mission's success was only possible because of each one's effort, making it clear there is no doubt about the value all of them had. The elves get emotional, realizing they really helped, smiling happily. The leader says he is glad and reminds them he will leave in 2 days, asking everyone to take the medicine and rest well until then. They respond cheerfully, calling him sensei. The leader smiles while showing the real weapon used, a huge magical cannon called Demon Tower. It is revealed that this cannon was responsible for draining the elite elf's magical power, showing the true nature of the attack that ensured victory. The magical cannon is shown absorbing energy from 5 elves positioned in a magic circle, then firing a powerful attack. It locks onto the distant target and launches a precise magical explosion, hitting the enemy directly. This devastating shot is repeated 4 times, ensuring destruction. It is revealed there was no miracle. The attack was a brute force strategy using the magic of 20 elves as a power source, creating a long-range bombardment. From the enemy's point of view, it seemed the spell came from the person right in front of them. Meanwhile, ogres guarded the place, and goblins handled logistics in the camp, keeping everything running. The leader watches the field satisfied and reflects that the powerful elf was defeated not by another elite warrior, but by a bunch of useless people gathered in large numbers. He thinks he should have told the enemy before he died, smiling as if keeping a victorious secret. The narration reveals it took 61 people to defeat the elf, highlighting that in the end, it all came down to numbers. No one wins alone, no matter how much of a genius. Half a month later, the leader receives a cash reward from a satisfied noble who praises his work, eliminating bandits and the rebel knight. The protagonist is surprised to receive a large sum of money as a reward and asks if it is really right. The noble says he worked hard and deserves it. Taking the payment satisfied, the leader also hears that he really seems to like money a lot. The protagonist admits he is materialistic and cannot hide it when it comes to money. The noble, laughing, hints that maybe he is even involved in illegal potion sales, mentioning recent rumors. Then he gets serious and directly asks if he is responsible for that suspicious activity. The protagonist quickly denies any involvement with illegal potions, saying it was just a joke and that he already has too much work. Worried about avoiding suspicion, he decides to leave. The noble says if he needs anything, just call him. Alone, he comments surprised how satisfied the other was with so little. The noble laughs loudly, surprised that the protagonist, even so greedy, didn't bother to check the accounts. He admits the payment should be 10 times higher for the service done, but for him that is normal. The profit always goes to the nobles, while he only acts as an intermediary, without taking risks, satisfied with the world system. Outside a building, Soshi, introduced as the lowest-ranking elf, asks the protagonist if the negotiations went well. With a shy smile, she calls him sensei, showing respect and affection upon meeting him. The protagonist replies excited that the deal was a success, but Soshi frowns and complains that she hates working for that showy fat client. She even suggests changing clients. The protagonist tries to calm the situation, reminding her it is not nice to call him fat because he has feelings too. Soshi complains that they did all the hard work, but the showy fat man will take all the credit, and probably most of the reward. The protagonist explains that if a group of strangers appeared with the dead elf's body, the knights would be suspicious and might even kill them. She understands the point, but comments that if there were an official reward for his head, the situation would be very different. The protagonist reflects that even though the fat man keeps part of the money, no one else pays as well, so he keeps profiting. He knows they are seen only as private soldiers of the nobility, which guarantees them certain jobs, even if shady. Meanwhile, Soshi laments that they don't have any real jobs, but he keeps singing, happy to be able to do whatever he wants. Later, he calls Soshi so she doesn't fall behind. While the protagonist thinks he's satisfied just earning money every day, Soshi has a sudden idea. Excited, she suggests they find a job in a research lab where he could do what he loves and still be appreciated for it. The protagonist is surprised and a bit confused by the unexpected suggestion. Soshi imagines excitedly a scenario where the protagonist shows his inventions and everyone is impressed, wanting to become his assistants. Daydreaming, she pictures him refusing them all, saying with a loving look that he already has a great assistant, her, and that it's enough, thanking sincerely. Soshi melts, daydreaming and thinking the imagined scene is beautiful. But the protagonist, awkward, breaks the mood saying he has no plans to get a job. Disappointed and annoyed, she shakes him asking why he thinks like that. Completely frustrated, the protagonist reveals there are several reasons not to want a job, but the main one is that what he does is totally illegal. Soshi, confused, asks which part is illegal. He explains that, for example, the magical cannon recently used is a forbidden weapon. Even so, she doesn't see much problem, saying that, aside from the magic exhaustion, it doesn't cause direct damage, thinking only about efficiency. The protagonist explains with a serious look that, in that world, there are already established methods that depend on sacrifices. He says it's better to capture humans and elves alive, turn them into ammunition, and use them as disposable tools. Soshi is shocked, imagining the horror of that, with a frightened expression. The protagonist explains that economically, it is cheaper to use prisoners or enemies as magical fuel than expensive recovery potions. He reveals that all this technology he uses was sealed because it's considered illegal. That's why, if he worked in any official institution, he couldn't even build or use this kind of forbidden equipment. The protagonist concludes that, because of all this, things are perfect, just the way they are. Soshi admits she doesn't like that place at all, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Soon after, he changes the subject with a smile. Noticing they talk so much, they reach their destination right on time, and they keep walking together toward a busy building. The protagonist and Soshi arrive at a slave market, a busy but uncomfortable place that she clearly hates. While watching the scene, he smiles darkly, preparing for what he intends to do there. Inside the slave market, several women with animal ears and tails, along with elves, are locked in cages, looking sad and distrustful. The protagonist watches with interest, thinking about finding someone useful for his plans, while Soshi wonders what kind of scheme he's planning this time. The slave auction begins with great fanfare, presenting its highlight, an elite Beastkin warrior, a skilled hunter and master of ambushes. The crowd gets excited as the man is shown chained on stage, reinforcing the success and cruel spectacle of the market. Inside the luxurious auction hall, the bidding for the Beastkin slave starts high, at 20 million. The place is crowded and noisy, with an excited audience. Outside, Soshi watches the commotion and comments in surprise how busy the place really is. While the bids for the elite slaves rise to 40 million, the protagonist observes and comments that only top-quality slaves are traded there. He also recalls the quiet place where they sell the rejects, revealing he was bought from there, which shows a bit of his past. The protagonist arrives at a simple tent and greets the owner, asking if business is good. The seller, a suspicious-looking guy, recognizes him and says excitedly that he is the only customer who always comes back to buy. Soshi watches suspiciously and teases him, saying he must say that to everyone. Inside the empty store, the seller desperately begs the protagonist to buy something, saying that, as things are, he can barely sustain or feed the slaves. The protagonist comments, laughing, that it would be a hassle to find another supplier if he went bankrupt, and ends up deciding to buy something to help. Soshi watches, a bit awkward at the scene. The seller comments that Soshi seems to live much better now, and she smiles, saying she was lucky to find a good master. The protagonist asks what the recommendation of the day is, and the merchant, with a mischievous smile, says he has something very special to show, pointing to a cage in the back. Inside the cage, the seller shows a group of dark elves. The elves appear seated, with tense expressions and slave collars, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The protagonist observes the dark elves and thinks about their traits. Unlike common elves, they have little magical power but are resilient even in harsh environments. He also notices their sharp senses and recalls they are a naturally skilled hunting race, which makes them useful in other ways. The protagonist decides to buy all the dark elves, thinking they might be useful, and pays 200,000 for the group. The seller thanks him excitedly and then draws his attention to something different, pointing to the back of the store, where mysterious silhouettes with ears and horns can be seen behind bars. Inside the back cage, the protagonist finds several Beastkin girls, with animal ears and tails, wearing slave collars. He watches carefully, surprised, immediately recognizing they are Beastkin, which sparks his interest. The seller comments that Beastkin are not highly recommended because they are rebellious. The protagonist notes that although they have little magic and limited resistance, they have incredible explosive speed thanks to their animal traits. He concludes that if obedient, they can be quite useful, although for heavy work, ogres are better. The seller explains that those Beastkin were captured after losing a tribal war and sold by the victors to humans for not obeying orders. So she asks the protagonist if he intends to sell them later, questioning if people would buy thinking they are helping. The protagonist becomes thoughtful, analyzing the situation silently. The protagonist watches the trapped Beastkin closely, who stare at him with intense, almost challenging looks. Then he gives a slight smile, suggesting he already has some idea about what he will do with them. The protagonist decides to take both the Beastkin and the Dark Elves, saying he needed someone with a strong spirit. He introduces himself to them as Gaikaku Hikume, a mage, and warns that from now on he will be their master. The girls look at him attentively while he smiles, introducing himself almost cordially. The group walks through a forest until reaching an isolated base. The new slaves comment that the place is quite remote, but resign themselves, saying that being at the bottom of the hierarchy, they have no right to choose. So she leads the way while the protagonist follows silently ahead, seeming oblivious to their complaints. Arriving at the base, the place shows a calm environment where several elves, Beastkin, and goblins work in the fields and tend the crops. Other elves are busy inside the house, apparently doing household chores. The atmosphere is routine and simple work, with everyone involved in the location's activities. The new elves and Beastkin arrive at the base and are surprised, realizing the place is not severe, but calm and peaceful. Some even laugh, relieved. Meanwhile, workers in the fields notice the protagonist's return and welcome him with an animated "welcome back," showing that everyone there seems to live in relative harmony. The newcomers are warmly received by the other inhabitants, who say they are eager to work with them. The new slaves are surprised to see that everyone there seems healthy, well-dressed, and full of life. This makes them timidly ask Gaikaku if it is right to hope that here they might have a better life. While walking, one of the Beastkin asks why there are so many different races there if this is just a farm, since normally elves and dark elves wouldn't do this kind of work. She comments that ogres and goblins are strong for manual labor, but elves would be useless at it. Gaikaku smiles and says at least someone has some common sense, explaining again that he is a mage, implying there is another reason to keep so many different races nearby. Gaikaku explains that his real job is to lead a private army under the direct orders of the local lord. He describes how each race has its function. Ogres handle heavy labor, but become heavy infantry in war. Goblins do general services and become artillery, and elves, who normally prepare medicines, are also integrated into military strategies. All this reveals that this farm is actually a training and support field for his private army. The Beastkin is surprised to understand that everyone there, even being ogres, goblins, and elves, can become heavy infantry or artillery in war, and asks if they are really that capable. The two women confirm, a little embarrassed but proud, saying that's right, showing that all there are elites, even composing a secret unit. Gaikaku breaks the mood by bluntly saying they are actually just useless, low-level slaves, just like the ones he brought. This makes the girls discouraged and embarrassed, while he adds that pretending to be something they're not doesn't help, because the truth would eventually come out. They try to argue that they could work hard and improve, but he replies it's not worth fooling themselves. On this page, the girls ask if they can really work as part of a secret unit. Gaikaku replies that this doesn't happen that easily, saying that even if someone from the base tries hard, they will only serve as disposable pawns, not becoming soldiers. But he also comments that here it's different, since everyone has healthy bodies and minds. Right after, he calls them to follow him, promising to show the secret to becoming real soldiers, while the girls become moved and hopeful. On this page, Gaikaku leads the group to a place where large hairy bodies, looking like ogres or giant beasts, are suspended inside tubes or capsules filled with liquid. One of the girls, frightened, asks, "What is this?" while watching the body's mechanical arm, which seems to be preserved or modified. The atmosphere becomes tenser and darker, suggesting this is the secret to becoming a soldier. He proudly shows his creations, reinforced flesh and bone golems made as magical weapons. The girls are shocked to see how imposing they are, even though they have only twice the strength of an ordinary human. The mage explains that this is little compared to the ogre's natural strength, but enough to turn even the weakest into soldiers. He explains that after equipping themselves with magical tools and undergoing training, they all gained strength and proved their worth on the battlefield. They were not just disposable pawns, they returned alive after defeating enemies, earning recognition and honor repeatedly. He says they have pride, and that's what drives them. The girls are impacted upon hearing these words, showing a mix of surprise and respect on their faces. They realize that deep down, even though weak and always defeated, they still have faith in themselves. They think that if they gain experience there, they can change their fate. The girls, moved by emotion, declare together that they want that too, the pride of warriors, the flame that makes them fight. United, they show that deep down they all share the same desire for strength and dignity. The mage watches, satisfied, thinking he made a good purchase by acquiring his new subordinates. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a soldier bursts into the Count's room, bringing an urgent report. A report reaches the Count, informing that 10 armed ogres are occupying a farming village, causing panic among the residents. The Count decides quickly and orders Gaikaku Hikume's magical battalion to move to handle the situation. In an abandoned, destroyed human village, ogres have fun and laugh, saying that human lands are amazing because everyone runs away just by hearing them growl, something that would never happen in their own territory. For them, it seems like a dream to be there without resistance. The ogres throw a big party in a hall, celebrating with food and drink. They laugh loudly and say humans are the best, because they give them everything they want without resistance, reinforcing how easy it is to enjoy themselves in those lands. The ogres continue their party in the hall, but suddenly hear a strange sound that catches their attention. While one of them approaches curiously, outside, people carrying shields and swords begin to prepare, revealing that something unexpected is about to happen. A group of girls armed with swords and shields gather beside the hooded man, ready to face the danger. Meanwhile, some onlookers mock them, saying it looks like just a pretend game of soldiers. Despite the jokes, the girls show unexpected determination, making it clear they won't underestimate these little warriors so easily. The ogres mock the group, finding the idea of those girls trying to face them amusing. The hooded man's confidence, however, shows he has no doubts about the outcome. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Lord reaffirms his trust in him to handle the situation, showing he expects much more than a simple show of strength. The group analyzes the ogres' behavior, noting they usually attack small villages, consuming everything, and moving on. They criticize how these ogres act just to feed their pride and hunger at the expense of humans. The woman asks if the rookies will stay out of this mission, but the leader reflects that they haven't even shown what real work is yet. The group led by Gaikaku arrives at the battlefield. With a confident smile, he says it's the perfect moment for the rookies to follow and learn, ordering everyone to come to the front line with him. Meanwhile, the ogres, already satisfied from eating so much, begin to move, ready for confrontation. After eating, the ogres decide it's time for a post-meal exercise and face Gaikaku's group with mockery, choosing targets among the girls. One says he'll take the dark elf. Meanwhile, Gaikaku orders everyone to pay attention to what's about to happen, preparing them for what comes next. Gaikaku positions himself in front of the girls and tells them to stay alert, saying to watch closely how they fight. Then he activates a magic circle on the ground, preparing to show his true power and impress those watching. Near the river outside the village, a large magical cannon is prepared, accompanied by several people. Upon receiving the signal, one of the women orders to pour all the magic into the device, and her partner confirms, focusing to energize the weapon. The girls gather around the large magical cannon, concentrating their magic to the max. Motivated by the desire to help their commander at the front line, they all dedicate themselves fully. The cannon begins to shine intensely, charging energy for the shot. The magical cannon fires a powerful energy beam toward the sky, marking the success of the girls' collective effort. Meanwhile, one of the leaders is taken to rest after giving their all. The commander watches confidently and leaves the rest of the mission in the group's hands, praising the good work they have done so far. The mage raises his arm, commanding the release of powerful magic that ascends toward the sky, this time explaining he will use a different type of attack, less concentrated than the previous one. Meanwhile, the ogres watch tensely, realizing something big is about to happen. The mage uses a scattered shot spell, hitting several ogres at once and leaving them in shock. They scream in pain and confusion, not understanding where the attack comes from, while the leader gets angry and realizes there must be a mage hidden nearby. The mage watches the ogres grow angry, and promising revenge after the first attack. They advance, threatening to make him suffer, but the mage just smiles confidently and replies that he never said that was the end, making it clear he still has more tricks to show. The ogres, thinking they found a gap, shout to advance and attack with everything, led by their confident chief. But as they charge, they are surprised by the sudden appearance of huge golems that descend with force, leaving the group stunned and shocked by the unexpected counterattack. The combat begins brutally. The enormous golems advance, crushing the ogres mercilessly. The impact causes panic among the enemies, who are horrified to see their comrades destroyed so easily. Meanwhile, the mage watches the scene with a satisfied smile, confident in the overwhelming force he unleashed. The group celebrates victory after the successful attack. The elves used magic to confuse and weaken the ogres, clearing the way for the golems to finish the job. The mage smiles satisfied, praising the rookies and asking what they thought of the result. One of the warriors answers excitedly, saying it was incredible, even though it was against others of their own race. The mage, with a confident smile, says they are very mistaken. The victory was guaranteed from the start, and they didn't even need to use the special weapon he created. The mage explains the victory was certain because they had 20 ogres in the front line and 20 elves behind, providing magical support, 40 against 10. Still, he admits that half of them would have died if they were normal soldiers, as those enemy ogres were very strong. Even the defeated ogres acknowledge this, saying the result wouldn't change even with better troops. The mage smiles proudly, saying there is nothing better than learning in practice, calling it fun and useful. Meanwhile, the girls are happy, feeling capable for having won without casualties, thanks to his strategy. They are excited and confident after this victory. The girls get excited to know that weapons made especially for them will soon be ready and ask to fight soon. The other more insecure group responds that they would only fight if ordered. The mage doesn't worry, saying the others were like that at first too, and begins to laugh calmly, confident in their progress. The dark elf sits alone at night, thoughtful. The narrator explains dark elves are known as hunters of the night, with quick reflexes, excellent night vision, and sharp hearing. She shows confusion and maybe some insecurity about everything happening. A new wanted poster is released in the city, announcing that the Count has placed a reward. The target is a group of ex-soldiers who deserted, became bandits, and are raiding several villages. People gather to hear about this long-awaited mission, showing interest and concern. The group discusses the situation. Since now, no one knows where the bandits are. A warrior suggests using the ogre's strategy, while the elf dismisses elven artillery for being too slow. They see this as a rare opportunity to act differently. This time, the group decides to leave the mission to the Beastkin. The cat-eared girl gets excited, shows her sharp claws and smiles, ready to finally act. The chief entrusts the mission to the Beastkin, and Demora gets excited to finally fight. Enthusiastic, she offers to take care of reconnaissance, showing her determination. The leader decides to leave the task to the Dark Elves. They show willingness, but he emphasizes they only need to locate the enemy, without engaging in combat. Phobos, the Dark Elf, shows concern about facing trained humans. She recalls that in her homeland, they were always advised to be cautious of human armies, while the leader calls her worried as usual and asks what troubles her. The leader reassures Phobos that, since they became bandits, the enemies are no longer so organized. He guarantees she will understand better once she sees how everything works, but reminds her they first need to locate them to start anything. The Dark Elves split up to search the region, following the map with marked points. During the search, Phobos watches from afar a group of bandits gathered around a campfire, celebrating and drinking loudly, confirming their whereabouts. Hidden in the woods, two bandits complain that, even though it's a human kingdom, the army prefers other races. They show they are former soldiers now living as raiders, frustrated and armed, ready for trouble. Suddenly, one bandit takes a punch so strong he flies away, falling unconscious. The group leader notices the attack and shouts a warning to the others, looking around trying to understand where the blow came from. The bandits realize they are being attacked with stones and try to protect themselves by raising shields. Meanwhile, someone with military boots approaches silently, surprising a bandit who doesn't understand what is happening. The Beastkin appear camouflaged high in the trees, watching the bandits' movement and ready to attack from above, taking advantage of the terrain. The bandits try to calm down, saying it's just stones and the enemy is exposed in the trees. Meanwhile, the Beastkin analyze the situation, noticing the human's vulnerable position. One bandit grits his teeth, annoyed to have to deal with non-humans. The bandits complain that humans are seen as a common, inferior race. One vents that the other races look down on them. The scene shows a summary of each race's advantages and disadvantages. Elves are good at magic but fragile. Ogres are tough but incapable of magic. One bandit reflects that humans are neither as strong as ogres nor as skilled in magic as elves, but notes they have the advantage of being able to learn magic. Then he demonstrates this power by casting a spell with his hand. A Beastkin smiles confidently and lets out a powerful howl, surprising the bandit group. The sound echoes loudly, creating a wave that breaks the enemy's magical attack and leaves their leader alarmed at what just happened. The Beastkin jump down from the trees with agility, smiling confidently as they descend toward the bandits. The impact of the jump is so strong it scares the enemy group, who watch in shock, realizing the imminent danger. The Beastkin moves swiftly through the trees, confusingly surrounding the bandits. The enemy leader finds the movement pattern strange and gets angry for not being able to understand how many enemies there are, realizing something is very wrong. The bandits get confused, seeing that not even the thinnest branches break under the Beastkin's weight. Suspicious, they start speculating if this is some kind of magical trick, or if they're tied with ropes. Unable to understand what is happening, the bandits look around confused, unable to see where the Beastkin went. One even asks if they fled, but the leader scolds, saying it's obvious they are hidden and preparing a surprise attack. The narrator highlights how camouflaged clothing can be underestimated. In a small place, it's easy to count enemies, but in a wide area with unknown targets, it's almost impossible to track. The bandits, annoyed, start searching the forest, trying to find the Beastkin that disappeared. The Beastkin reappears smiling among the trees, taking advantage of the bandits' distraction. One of them jumps powerfully, shouting that this is the right moment to attack, leaving the enemy leader shocked for falling into the same trap again. The Beastkin completely surround the bandits and begin throwing stones. Desperate, they try to protect themselves and avoid fatal hits. The leader holds the shield, confident he can withstand the stones, but is surprised to realize the strength and speed of the attacks. The bandit leader is shocked to see that what they are actually throwing are not ordinary stones but ceramic bombs filled with gunpowder and lead. He shouts that it's a grenade, realizing the deadly danger of the attack about to explode. The explosion happens, scattering shrapnel everywhere, while one of the Beastkin crouches to protect herself. Soon after, their group walks calmly through the battlefield, making clear the fight was easily dominated. The bandit leader, fallen and wounded, complains that the Beastkin only have weapons and glory thanks to humans. Outraged, he shouts that he hates those abominations. The Beastkin just smiles confidently, hearing the reply, maintaining her superior air. The Beastkin celebrate the mission's success, jumping excitedly while thanking the chief for the magical weapon he made for them. One of them shows her enthusiasm, floating lightly with the special backpack that is light and offers buoyancy, making her movements easier. The narration explains that this is not an ordinary backpack, but a special vest that holds stones and grenades in the front, while the back contains a very light gas. This makes the rear part function like a balloon, making everything lighter and allowing the Beastkin to move quickly among the branches without worrying about obstacles. The chief joyfully celebrates the success of the high-mobility grenadiers and talks about creating even bolder tactics. The Beastkin are happy just to see that he is satisfied, but they also comment on how the bandits truly hated them from the bottom of their hearts. The chief and the elf observe the defeated bandits. He explains that these men left the army out of frustration, thinking that way they would be valued. But he concludes that in the end, losing a few like that doesn't matter, since the human army remains strong. The chief reflects that the human army's strength lies in large numbers and the ability to call reinforcements or retreat to safe bases. But by deserting, these men lost that support and were left isolated, with nowhere to run. To him, soldiers like that, without strength or backup, are nothing to fear. Fofos comments that it's kind of sad to see those men treated as disposable. The chief agrees but says that doesn't justify them becoming bandits. Then he remembers that he himself commits crimes, even finding it a bit hypocritical to criticize. Fofos becomes even more worried about the situation as the group moves away. The chief receives payment for the secret mission to eliminate the bandits and hears praise for having defeated even ex-knights. He downplays it, saying it was just luck, but admits with a smile that things always end up that way for him. The man from the castle laughs and praises the chief, handing over another bag of money. The chief asks if it's an advance for another job, and the man explains with a mischievous smile that soon a noble will arrive at the castle, suggesting that something bigger is about to happen. The man from the castle tells the hooded chief that he is quite useful, but reminds him to know his place when facing the nobility, implying that the visitor will be someone even more important than the count. Finally, he tells the chief to enjoy the money for now, with an air of superiority. The chief feigns humility, saying it would be an unforgivable shame for someone so lowly as him to stand beside a noble. With a smile, he politely says goodbye and leaves, while the man from the castle tells him to enjoy himself and have fun. The chief leaves the place with a smile, calling the man from the castle just some guy who only does what he's told when a few coins are thrown. Meanwhile, the noble locks a scroll in a drawer, satisfied to have control of the situation. The scroll reveals a letter addressed to Count Bolich, praising his achievements and inviting him to join the Order of Knights. Commander Testoria promises to visit him personally to thank him for recent successes and hopes to receive a response on that occasion. The Count reads the letter and thinks worriedly that if Gaikaku finds out about this, he'll want the credit and might even end up becoming a knight. Outraged, he decides that a greedy and opportunistic man like Gaikaku must never receive such an honor, concluding that only someone as noble as himself deserves that position. The Count holds the letter with a greedy smile, dreaming of completing the ceremony and becoming a knight. He imagines being envied by everyone and confidently declares that he will definitely earn that title. The chief appears walking carefree and whistling, and the Beastkin comments that he seems to be having fun. He explains he was told to stay away from the castle because someone important is coming. Although he says it's good their employer is being recognized, he also shows interest in using the time to focus on research and improve his equipment. The elf comments that she heard rumors Bolich was invited to join the Order of Knights and wonders if the important visit is because of that. The chief laughs and doubts it, saying that even though Bolich is foolish, he has his limits and would never accept something like that so easily. The Count, nervous, thinks he needs to lie to avoid being discovered because he knows he's guilty. Meanwhile, the chief laughs loudly, finding it funny to see a noble debase himself like that, only regretting not having seen the scene personally. The elf recalls the Count's contradictions, who doesn't want to be called fat, but calls the other an idiot. Soon after, someone appears and loudly questions the soldier, drawing everyone's attention. The soldier confronts a merchant and accuses him of selling illegal products. The man tries to defend himself, saying he has a license and got everything by normal means, but the soldier shows an official document and says the medicine called Dakara is banned, confirming the illegality of the business. The seller insists that this is the best-selling product and rebels against the inspection. People from the village appear defending the medicine, saying it cures everything and their children improved with it. The soldier, already irritated, demands they explain clearly what strange effects the medicine might have. The chief observes the confusion and understands that the suspicious medicine is Dakara. He recalls that the Count had mentioned the circulation of dubious potions and thinks the soldier is doing his job properly for once. The Beastkin comments that the medicine really sells well, and the chief concludes that if it works, it makes sense it's so popular, even if dangerous. The elf, all excited, suggests the chief stay away from suspicious people and start selling real medicines. He sighs, pointing to the arrested seller right in front of them, and says it's not that simple, since the guy was just arrested for selling medicine. The elf insists that, for a genius like him, creating a strong and legal medicine would be easy, and people from the whole kingdom would come to be his apprentices, making him famous. The chief, holding her face with an exasperated air, says he's heard that talk before, showing he's used to her exaggerated ideas. The chief explains that making and selling medicine isn't so simple, since they'd need to produce huge quantities, repeating the same formula all day, non-stop. The elf imagines the effort and already gets exhausted just thinking about it, all sweaty and with a desperate look while mixing ingredients. The chief asks if she's sure, warning that it would be very demanding. The elf, a bit embarrassed, admits she will give up on the idea. He agrees, saying it was a wise decision, although she still thinks it would have been a good plan, looking at him with a somewhat disappointed expression. The elf imagines a scene where she would be exhausted, working as a slave, while the chief laughs on a throne, surrounded by money and shouting that all profits were his. Somewhat embarrassed, she comments that this would be normal for slaves. Soon after, in the present, she calls the chief with a sensei, wanting to say something. The elf asks, blushing, if he can read their minds. The chief smiles mischievously and says that since she worked hard to become his subordinate, she must want to do something smart and fun. But he makes clear that, above all, the most important thing for him is to have fun, showing his real priority. The elf gets super happy, hugs the chief's arm, and answers excitedly with a yes, showing she's thrilled to follow him in any plan, as long as they're together. A few weeks later, in Bolich's territory, the city is busy and full of people excitedly talking about an impressive demonstration of strength. Everyone looks at the castle, amazed, exclaiming, "The knights!" making clear that their visit caused a great impact. An elegant knight stands firmly, holding his weapon with determination. Soon after, he goes to Bolich, who receives him inside a hall with respect and a touch of nervousness. The atmosphere clearly shows that something serious is about to be discussed between them. The knightess raises her sword and says she will personally test Bolich's skills, asking him to block her strike. Bolich becomes completely confused and scared. not understanding the gravity of the situation. Bollock appears tense while waiting in the castle, reflecting on the weight of the moment. The narrator explains the hierarchy of the Order of Knights, showing the prestige of the title, from juniors to commanders. Soon, a group of elite knights arrives to greet him, further highlighting the importance of the meeting. Tistoria, the commander of the knights, presents herself firmly and with a confident smile, showing the authority and prestige she carries by leading the order. Tistoria appears with her imposing presence and striking beauty, leaving Bollock visibly charmed and excited just to have her there, unaware of the real weight of the situation. Tistoria arrives with her knights to formally apologize for the problems caused by her subordinates. Bollock tries to act cordial, but one of the knights gets furious at his look, nearly losing control. Tistoria invites him to talk privately, leaving Bollock relieved to escape the tense encounter unscathed. Bollock is radiant upon confirming that Tistoria really wants to welcome him into the Order of Knights. Tistoria, with a diplomatic smile, explains that the Order is always looking for exceptional talents, saying that achievements like his would be welcome. Tistoria surprises Bollock by offering him not only a place in the Order of Knights, but the position of Commander of the Knights. Bollock is shocked, remembering his old dream of becoming a knight and training hard for it, visibly moved by the opportunity. Bollock recalls how he trained for years, but never had the talent to be a knight, while others achieved it easily. Surprised by the offer to become Commander of the Knights, he questions if it's really right, since there are many experienced knights in the order. Tistoria confirms, saying she heard he defeated Avior with his own forces. Tistoria praises Bollock's subordinates, saying they must be exceptional. She then declares she intends to appoint him Commander of the Knights and make his subordinates official knights, entrusting him with leading a new order. Bollock is amazed imagining his own men as knights. Bollock begins to imagine the future. He sees himself as a noble commander of the knights, with Gaikaku proudly presenting himself as his knight. However, he soon feels something wrong, questioning if it's really appropriate to make someone like Gaikaku his official subordinate. He becomes tense, realizing the weight of the situation. Bollock clenches his fist, summons courage, and firmly calls for Tistoria, the commander of the knights, who watches everything with a slight smile. He seems determined to give an important answer. Bollock begins to confess, sweating and visibly nervous, while Tistoria watches curiously. He tries to explain about his subordinates, and says it was he who defeated the fugitive knight with his men. But he hesitates, as if hiding the true story, while the image of his ally appears, reminding him who really fulfilled that duty. Bollock ends up confessing desperately that it was all a lie. He admits he defeated the enemies alone, and that his subordinates are not strong enough to be knights. Tistoria just watches silently, serious, without clearly showing what she thinks about this revelation. Tistoria understands the man's explanation, who tries to justify himself by saying that, as a lord, he was embarrassed to report that he still did everything alone, since his subordinates weren't strong enough. He then suggests that, upon becoming commander, he would like to receive experienced knights from another order to serve under his command. Tistoria just watches with a slight smile, making it clear she understood the request. Commander Tistoria explains to the man that upon becoming part of the order, he will stop being just protected and will become the one who protects, following her orders. She asks if he is ready for that. He replies confidently, saying of course he is, and even feels honored to serve under the command of a young woman like her. Tistoria asks the man if he is prepared to give his own life. Full of pride, he answers yes, confident. Then Tistoria declares that from that moment on, he is her subordinate, under her direct command, praising his determination with an assessing look. Tistoria announces she will give her first order as commander of the knights, leaving the man excited to finally be part of the order. He answers eagerly, ready to obey. Then Tistoria raises her sword and says she will test his strength, surprising him. Tistoria smiles confidently, raises the sword, and warns she will attack, telling the man to prepare to block. He is completely shocked, wide-eyed, and lets out a surprised scream, clearly not knowing how to react. Tistoria confirms the man's excited yes and prepares to attack with the sword, full of energy. Desperate, he raises his hands, not understanding anything, and asking her to wait, completely scared by the situation. Tistoria smiles and asks if he is preparing a weapon or starting a magical enchantment. The man panics, thinking he will die if cut, and desperately tries to find a way out, while Tistoria says that, as commander, it is her duty to find out. Tistoria stares coldly at the man and orders him to show his true strength, demanding proof that he defeated Avior alone. The man, sweating and trembling, is clearly terrified by the direct challenge. Testoria smiles almost sadistically, grips her sword firmly, and says it's enough, because on the battlefield there is no room for hesitation. The man, panicking, thinks she may have discovered the whole charade just as she strikes him. The man falls to his knees begging for forgiveness, desperately admitting he lied to take credit for his soldiers' achievements. He confesses he wasn't even on the battlefield and only wanted respect from the knights, crying and taking full responsibility for the lies. Commander Testoria reveals she already knew the whole truth, but still wanted to accept him and his subordinates into the Order of Knights. She explains she only came there out of courtesy, knowing he wasn't obligated to tell the truth to the Order, leaving the man completely surprised. Commander Testoria concludes by saying she cannot trust someone who tries to show off in an interview and so decides to recruit only his subordinates for the Order, leaving the man shocked and utterly terrified. Testoria asks the man to call his subordinate while he has a breakdown, indignant for not being chosen to be a knight. He shouts that he's the one who truly deserves the title, but when intimidated by Testoria's sword, he nervously gives in and obeys, going to call the other. A few days later, the hooded man is relaxed and curious about what job he will have to do, also wondering who he will send to carry it out. When he knocks on the door, he is invited in. He enters confidently and greets the Count with a smile, saying it's a pleasure to see him well. Testoria introduces herself as the Supreme Commander of the Kingdom's Knights to Gaikaku Hikume. He is surprised to realize who stands before him, recalling rumors that Bolich was invited to the Order of Knights, making clear the importance of the visit. Still, Gaikaku keeps a smile, interested in how the conversation will go. Gaikaku gets annoyed realizing he was tricked by Bolich, thinking he was the one who should be in that position. He gets even more worried, recalling all the illegal things he keeps. Testoria, however, reassures him she is not there to arrest him, leaving him confused and briefly relieved as he thinks of how to get out of the situation. Gaikaku is relieved hearing Testoria explain she only came to recruit talents, nothing more. She reveals that upon investigating further, she found that besides defeating Avior, he also solved several problems in a short time, which caught her interest. Gaikaku is surprised and even a bit embarrassed when Testoria praises his work, saying it is truly impressive. She states with a smile that if this isn't what they call talent, then what would be? Gaikaku becomes completely awkward when Testoria, the Supreme Commander of the Knights, says she holds him in high regard, even though he is just a messenger. She calls him by name directly, making him even more nervous, and he tries to back off saying he's not made for this kind of responsibility. Gaikaku is shocked when Testoria, with a confident smile, extends her hand to officially appoint him as the new captain of the Order of Knights. He desperately thinks that's not what he signed up for, while ironically feeling this grand moment has finally arrived. Gaikaku is surprised to hear Testoria renewing the invitation for him to be the new captain of the Order of Knights. He wonders if it's really a good offer or not, while facing her confident smile, confused and unsure what to expect from this new responsibility. Gaikaku looks visibly uncomfortable with the sudden proposal to become captain of the Knights. He thinks everything is happening too fast and is suspicious, since he has no record justifying this promotion. Meanwhile, Testoria admits it may sound unbelievable, but reinforces her interest, even knowing he couldn't have achieved so many feats completely alone. Testoria comments that calling Gaikaku's methods magic tricks is the most accurate way to describe it, since nothing he did was normal. Despite sensing something hidden behind him, she decides not to investigate deeply. Then, instead of placing him in a common knight's order, she says she will form a personal order, directly linked to her, inviting Gaikaku to lead it. He is surprised, pointing at himself, not believing it. Testoria explains the best option would be for Gaikaku to bring his entire organization under her command, and thus be officially incorporated into the Knights. She also says he is free to refuse, but if accepted, various types of missions will be given to them, and upon successful completion, their group will be formally recognized. Gaikaku is surprised by the proposal, but Testoria warns him not to act alone as before. Testoria looks at Gaikaku with a sharp smile and makes it very clear, if he refuses or fails the missions, a formal investigation will be opened about him and his group. Gaikaku becomes nervous, sensing the pressure between the lines, while Testoria only smiles, asking if he fully understands what she means. Gaikaku leaves the castle thinking that was practically an order disguised as an invitation, asking for time to think. Testoria answers she will anxiously wait for his response. Outside, he is happily greeted by Michelle, who runs to welcome him with an excited smile. Michelle gets excited and says there's no choice, because if they say no, they will be arrested. She says enthusiastically that they are accepting the offer and will become knights, exactly what she admired in the forest. Gaikaku worries, thinking that means working as hard as the others, since the order is full of elites, and tries to warn her, saying, "But," Michelle, radiant, runs off, confirming that's exactly it, while he desperately follows behind. Michelle looks at Gaikaku confidently and says that if it's him, he can definitely handle it. He gets nervous, sweating and trying to argue, clearly pressured by her expectations. Gaikaku hears Michelle call him a genius and gives a crooked smile, commenting that she loves leaving everything in his hands. Walking thoughtfully, he reflects that being investigated or captured and losing his freedom would be even worse, showing that despite his complaints, he will act to avoid it. Gaikaku, with a confident smile, decides he will accept and become the commander of the knights, even knowing the weight of the responsibility. Michelle, happy, praises him excitedly, showing the confidence and admiration she has for him. Gaikaku laughs with Michelle and the other elf, saying that in their current state they wouldn't be able to handle the task, but everything stays in a joking and laughing tone. Then the castle appears and we see people thanking for the hard work, taking care of details to leave nothing uncomfortable, indicating they are preparing for something important. Gaikaku explains to the group that they don't have enough strength to accept missions from the Knight's squad. Michelle gets worried and asks what they will do. He recalls that before they bought slaves and trained them with magical weapons, but admits they no longer have time for that. Gaikaku says the group urgently needs ready fighters in large numbers, which worries Michelle. He then reveals he has someone in mind for that. Shortly after, he comments that they are in a human country, setting the context for the next step of the plan. Gaikaku concludes that by going to a guild, they will find many mercenaries available, indicating the next step to quickly gather combat strength for the group. A group of men insist on asking for something with suspicious smiles, surrounding someone ahead of them, but the serious and piercing gaze of a woman cuts the atmosphere, making it clear she will not tolerate what is happening. Three knightesses sit side by side with serious expressions and a tense atmosphere among them. The woman in the center watches the situation with suspicion, feeling that it seems too suspicious to be normal.